So today I want to talk about passive versus active listening, or I'll talk about them in this way of like unconscious versus conscious. So there seems to be like a lot of argument whether or not, passive listening or background listening is really worth it. A lot of people say, no, if you do all active listening, that's, you know, all you need. And some people are saying like, no, you should like be listening 24 hours a day, all the time, and you need to do that. I think that regardless of what side of that is right or what the balance is, there's some interesting evidence of passive listening being beneficial. So on the extreme end of people saying, no, passive listening isn't really worth it, or
I'm
passive
filming right
listening
now.
is you shouldn't put too much thought into doing passive
So
listening.
I'll look at them
I
in a
don't
minute. I'm
think
just
that
gonna finish
take is
connecting.
quite correct, and this seems to be supported by some research. So, uh, it, in like psychological literature, the consensus seems to be that unconscious learning and or unconscious processes they come before conscious learning. Basically, there's like this automatic processing stage that happens in this like first microseconds of hearing or seeing or whatever, that your unconscious processes start to basically try to recognize patterns. So this kind of idea of your unconscious processes recognizing patterns, uh, the literature says that this is probably due to limited conscious processing capacity. Like you don't have that much working memory, so there's these processes that try to kind of find what's relevant, essentially. I think a lot of people in the language learning community talk about this. I know Matt talked about this in one of his videos where it's like, you know, if you're at a party and someone calls your name across the room, you're going to instantly tune in, even though there was all this loud noise around you. You were just filtering that out, but you suddenly were able to pick out your name. That's like as an example of this working. I think. I don't know for sure, but it sounds right. Anyways, the literature further seems to suggest that like students who integrate this unconscious material will more rapidly integrate that material into their conscious processes. So your conscious processing is like bolstered by unconscious processing that came before it. So further, like when conscious activity time is limited, unconscious activity can compensate and improve the efficacy of the conscious process. However, one thing that literature review said that there hasn't really been any investigation as to whether or not, um, if you're doing some unconscious thing and your conscious thoughts are not relevant to that task, they don't know if this working on something unrelated like hinders the unconscious thing. So if you're like working on, math homework while you're listening to Japanese, isn't really evidence one way or the other whether or not the unconscious activity is being hindered by, this like math homework. So, that's not to say it does hinder it, it's just that there's no evidence. Anyways, so this is really interesting to me because it seems to suggest that, um, you know, you're not going to get fluent by only passively listening to stuff. But when you do come and you're reading or you are, actively listening to something, that all the stuff that you did like before that has an effect on this, including all the unconscious things. So if you were unconsciously listening to Japanese all day and you come and you actively listen to Japanese, you're able to more rapidly engage with that active immersion and you're able to get more out of it. So like, if you have the time and like it doesn't take away your focus from other tasks, Like, and if you can do it and you can passive immerse all day, like you're going to get a ton more out of your active immersion, is what this is seeming to suggest. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe if people have experiences or thoughts around this, you could leave comments. I know for personally, it seems like whenever I passively listen to stuff all day, that I feel better about my level of comprehension when I'm doing active immersion. I don't know if other people feel similar. Or, if you have other comments related to other topics, leave them down below too. I'd love to read them. And thanks for watching. Later.